In this video, I'm going to show you how to take a men's size extra large shirt and turn it into a woman's pinafore top using this as my inspiration. I hoped this would be a super easy refashion, but it got a little more complicated than I expected. So it might not be a complete beginner project, but it's fairly easy and I'm going to go step by step, so hopefully everyone can follow along. For this refashion, you'll need all the usual sewing basics along with a men's shirt and some extra fabric to line the bodice portion of the top. I used an old pillowcase. You'll also need a sheet of paper, a pencil, and a ruler to create a simple pattern for the bodice. So let's get started. To disassemble the shirt, remove the pocket if your shirt has one. Unpick or cut off the sleeves and the cuffs. I like to unpick because it gives me a little extra fabric to work with, but you can cut if you prefer. Open the side seams of the sleeves so they can lay flat, then continue along the side seams to open the body of the shirt. To cut the skirt, line up the shirt at the underarms, then cut the top from the bottom at the sleeves. Since mine is plaid, I can follow the print, but otherwise I'd probably mark the cut lines to keep them straight. Remove the hem flaps as close to the hem as possible. Cut straight down the sides and cut off the button plackets. This is what the final pattern will look like using a regular sheet of 8.5 by 11 inch paper. Looking at the paper horizontally, cut a 1/2 inch off the bottom so the height is 8 inches. Measure 9.5 inches from the left edge and make a vertical line. Measure 4.5 inches from the bottom and make a horizontal mark on the line. On the top, measure 6 inches from the left and make a vertical mark. Square up the two marks, then draw a quarter circle to connect them. You can use a small plate if that helps. Right fold on the left side with an arrow and cut out the pattern. Place the two sleeves on top of each other, lining up the button plackets. Fold the sleeves lengthwise and place the pattern on the sleeve. If you need to add some width to the pattern, move the pattern away from the fold. If you need to subtract, place beyond the fold. Make sure the pattern is fully on both the front and the back of the sleeve, pin into place, and cut out the pattern. From the other section of the sleeve, cut 2 strips 3.5 inches wide for the straps. From the upper back of the shirt, cut 2 more strips 3.5 inches wide for the other 2 straps. You should have 4 total. Fold them in half and cut to 7.5 inches or 15 inches in length when unfolded. To make the lining, double the fabric by folding it in half lengthwise. Fold it in half again horizontally, then pin the pattern to the fabric with the left side aligned with the fold. Then cut out the lining. You can actually skip the lining and hem the bodice or sew a seam binding around the edges instead, but having a lining will give the top more stability. To sew the straps, fold them in half lengthwise with the right sides facing each other. Start at one end, back tack, turn 90 degrees and continue along the side, but leave the other end open. Then back tack to secure the seam. Trim the corners of the straps as close to the stitches as possible without cutting them. Turn the strap inside out and push out the corners. Repeat with the remaining 3 straps, then iron. For the bodice, sew the side seams together on the wrong side of the fabric with the right sides facing each other, back tacking at the beginning and end to secure the seam. Then finger press open, and repeat on the other side. To create the darts, try the bodice on inside out. You can pin it to your clothes to keep it in place. Pinch the fabric below the center of the bust and mark it with a pin. Then place another pin where you want the dart to start. Take the bodice off and mark the dart with a marker and repin to make it easier to sew. Since I want a loose fit, I'm only going to take it in a little bit. Measure the distance from the side seam, mine was 5 3/4 inches, and transfer the markings to the other side. The height of my dart was 3 1/4 inches and the width was 3/8 of an inch for reference. Carefully sew the darts along the marks. Start at the bottom of the dart and back tack, then sew off the edge of the fabric at the top of the dart without back tacking. Tie the threads off with a double knot instead. This will make the dart point less likely to pucker. Iron the extra fabric to the outside and pin into place. For the lining, sew the side seams together with the right sides facing, same as with the bodice. Then finger press open. To sew the lining to the bodice, turn the bodice inside out and the lining right side out. Place the lining inside the bodice so that the right sides of the bodice and the lining face each other. Line up the top edges and loosely pin into place. Sandwich the straps between the lining and the bodice with the unfinished end pointing up. Line up the edge of the strap with the edge of the underarm curve, leaving room for seam allowance, and pin into place. Repeat with the other 3 straps. Sew around the top edge of the bodice, starting at the underarm seam and making sure the lining, bodice, and straps are properly aligned with the edge of the presser foot. Adjust the straps to make sure they're straight when you get to them. When you return to the starting point, back tack to fasten the seam. Turn the bodice right side out to check the seams. The straps should be sewn to the bodice with the finished ends out and the lining inside with the right sides visible. If everything looks okay, then trim the straps and the corners and clip the curves of the underarm seams. Turn right side out again and iron. You can skip this next step, but I like to sew a row of stitches along the top to keep the edge crisp and the lining tucked in. Start at the underarm seam and sew as close to the edge as you can, all the way around the top until you get back to the starting point, then back tack to secure the stitches. Next, we're going to sew the side seams of the skirt. I'm going to use the French seam, but use whatever method you prefer. For a French seam, sew on the right side of the fabric with the wrong sides facing each other using a small seam allowance. I generally line the side of the presser foot up with the edge of the fabric. Back tack at the beginning and end of the seam to fasten it. Repeat with the other 2 side seams. Trim the seam allowances close to the seams. Turn the shirt inside out, fold the seam at the edge, and press it. Repeat on the other 2 seams. Sew a second seam with the folded seam along the side of the presser foot. Back tack at the beginning and end of the seam to secure it and repeat with the other 2 seams. The result is a nice clean seam with the raw edges encased in the fabric. To gather the fabric of the skirt, use the longest stitch setting on the machine. I used a contrasting thread color, but it isn't necessary. Starting at the back seam, sew a row of stitches as close to the edge as possible all the way around the skirt. Do not back tack. When you get close to the starting point, turn the fabric 90 degrees Make 2 stitches using the hand crank. Turn the fabric another 90 degrees and sew a second row parallel to the first. You can also use a single row of stitches, but the gathers are a little more difficult to control. Pull the gathering threads of the skirt until the width matches the width of the top, then distribute the gathers evenly. Next, we're going to sew the skirt to the top, and this is the tricky part. First, create tucks in the lining to match the bodice darts and pin or sew into place so that the diameter of the lining matches the bodice. With the bodice inside out and the skirt right side out, line up the back seam of the skirt with the center back of the bodice. Tuck the bodice into the skirt. The right side of the lining should face the wrong side of the skirt. Pin the skirt to the lining only and not the bodice. Sew the skirt to the lining starting at the back seam. Go all the way around, and when you reach the beginning of the seam, back tack to secure it. Turn the top right side out and make sure the gathers drape nicely and that the seams are on the correct side. Then remove the gathering threads. I actually saved these long threads and reused them for little hand sewing projects like sewing on buttons. Company policy at the House of Re. Reuse everything. Iron a crease in the lining where it meets the skirt and continue all the way around. Fold the edge of the bodice over the seam and iron. Pin the folded edge into place all the way around the bodice. Stitch the bodice to the skirt close to the folded edge. When you come back to the beginning of the seam, back tack to secure it. To hem the skirt, turn up the raw edge a 1/4 inch or so on the wrong side of the fabric and iron into place. Turn the folded edge up again, iron again, and pin into place. Sew close to the fold all the way around the hem. Once you reach the starting point, back tack to secure the seam. Tie the straps in a double knot and you're done. And here's the result. I really like the idea of a pinafore or apron top, something you can wear over an underlayer, especially in the transitional months. So this is a versatile piece. It's definitely a bit oversized on me. I think it would easily fit a size medium and maybe even a large, so keep that in mind if you decide to give it a go. And I hope this inspires you to try your own refashioning project. Thanks for watching and happy upcycling!